Congressman Scott, thank you so much for speaking with Voice of America.
Thank you.
Recently, you were part of a congressional delegation led by Armed House Services Committee Chairman Thornberry to 4 nations in Asia, including South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, and Singapore, where you participated in the Shangri-La Dialogue. What was the overall purpose of the trip?
The purpose of the trip was to reassure the world of our commitment to the Southeast Asia region and to reassure the world of our commitment to work on an international basis to try to solve the problem with regard to Kim Jong-un and North Korea. Kim Jong-un is not just a problem for the United States, he's a problem for everybody in the world. There's about 50% of the population that lives in pretty close proximity, as you know, to North Korea. And so a lot of the dialogue revolving North Korea was how do we create the partnerships that it takes to resolve that situation without shots being fired.
About North Korea, this week we mourned the death of the American student held by North Korea for over a year, Mr. Otto Warmbier. And also following that, President Trump said that while he appreciated China's effort on North Korea, it has not worked. In your view, how should the U.S. deal with the North Korean regime going forward?
Well, first of all, with regard to the young man who recently passed away, it should be a reminder to the world of just how brutal the North Korean regime is under Kim Jong-un. They not only treat foreigners that way, they treat their own people that way. They have no respect for human life or for other people. And so the question is, how do we address the situation of North Korea with the least amount of damage to people around the world? I believe it's going to require coordination not only between the United States and China, but Russia as well. And so, as I said, over 50% of the world population lives within pretty close proximity to North Korea. South Korea, Seoul is obviously very close, is within artillery range of North Korea, one of the most densely populated cities in the world. And so we're going to continue to work with the other countries that will work with us to try to solve these problems. I wish that China were more aggressive than they have been. When we were at the Shangri-La Dialogue, I had the opportunity to speak with the Chinese general there about that. I'm not sure that China has the influence over North Korea that the rest of the world believes China has. I think they recognize Kim Jong-un as a threat. I think they recognize that if something happens with regard to North Korea, that it will have a negative impact on China as well as every other country, not only in that region, but the world. And I do think that there is a desire from them to help. I'm not sure that they know exactly how to do it at this stage with somebody of his demeanor and his attitude.
Another issue in the Asia Pacific, big issue, is the China's actions in the South China Sea, and obviously it's one of the main topics of discussion during the Shangri-La Dialogue.
Sure.
Coming away from those discussions with other Asian leaders, how do you feel about this issue?
The thing that was reassuring to me, the most reassuring to me, was the response of the other leadership in Asia and their desire to resist China with regard to the expansion. So none of the other countries believe that China is operating in good faith. This is obviously a challenge to long-established international law and order. And I think what you will see is a renewed resolve from not only the United States, but the countries in that Asia-Pacific region to stop this. And not only to stop it, but to reverse it. China is obviously a global power, and responsibility comes with being a global power. And part of that responsibility is that you are willing to abide by the long-established laws of the sea. And so that's all that we ask of China, is that they abide by the laws of the sea.
During your visit, you also visited Vietnam, and during that visit, you were joined by Senator McCain, and you visited the Hoa Lo prison, so-called Hanoi Hilton.
Yes, ma'am.
That was where Senator McCain was held and other U.S. soldiers were held as POW during the Vietnam War. Can you share us your thoughts on after the visit?
It's hard to describe. My grandfather was a POW in World War II, and so I have a particular affection for those men and women who have been through that. But to be there with Senator McCain in the prison, it's just something that there really aren't words to describe the emotions of listening to him tell the story in that location where it actually happened. It's one of those things where you just have to be there, and it'll be an experience that I'll remember the rest of my life.
U.S. and China are two big superpowers in the Asia Pacific. Going forward, how do you think the U.S. should deal with the relationship with China and in this area of security? What do you see are the challenges and opportunities?
So there are certainly areas where we have common interest, even though we don't necessarily share the same values. In areas where we have common interest, I think that you'll see the leadership of our countries work together. In areas where we don't have common interest or where our interests are opposing each other, I think you'll see the U.S. continue to establish partnerships, to reaffirm those partnerships, and you will see, I believe, more coordinated military exercises with our partner nations in that part of the world, just as a show of our resolve as the United States for maintaining those international laws of the sea and our partnership with the other countries in Southeast Asia.
What is your hope for U.S.-China relations going forward?
You know, I would hope that with the leadership of the countries could find where we have those common interests and that we could work to resolve the problems. Obviously, a situation like North Korea requires the United States and China and quite honestly, Russia as well, probably to work together to resolve that situation. The best solution is always a negotiation, and when negotiations don't work, then obviously hard power has to be used. The only way soft power works is if we have the support of China and of the other countries in the world, including Russia, I believe, in resolving the issues. So. Our hope is always to use soft power, but I can assure you the United States is willing to use hard power if necessary to protect its citizens and its friends and allies.
Thank you so much, Congressman Scott, for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Appreciate it.